Hey everyone, welcome to Inspired Action, the leadership forecast, where real conversations don't just sound good, they change how leaders show up. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and today we've got 3 leaders stepping up, leaning in, and bringing the kind of insight you don't get from a playbook, you only get from experience. So whether you're leading a team, building a culture, or just trying to show up better than you did yesterday, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the newest edition of Inspired Action Leadership Forecast. We're so excited to have you here. This week's Inspired Action question: what causes people to disengage even when they are physically present? Because here's the truth. Just because someone is in the room doesn't mean that they're necessarily still on the game, right? They may show up, they may be answering emails, they may be attending meetings and doing the work, but still mentally be completely checked out. And so disengagement isn't always something that's loud and visible. It looks silent. It's low energy. It's just maybe scraping enough to get by. And so today we're going to talk about how leaders see this and maybe what do we observe and what can cause that. And so I'm excited to have these 3 ladies with us. We're going to jump into this, but I want to do a quick introduction first before we dive into answering that question. First and foremost, Hananda Whittingham, speaker, yogi, longevity enthusiast, and the founder of Successful Note Solutions. She based this on her desire to create and help others create financial freedom through truly passive income backed by real property. We have Flora Chuodhary, international senior regional HR business partner with more than a decade of bringing structure, empathy, and operational clarity to the C-suite and senior leaders across the globe, joining us from India. And Dr. Carol Wheeler, owner, founder of Nopa Leadership. She is a multifaceted entrepreneur bringing leadership strategy, executive coaching, and workshop facilitation to leaders and their teams to help bring out the best in both. And if I remember correctly, she dabbles in commercial real estate now too. So ladies, welcome. We are so excited to have you guys here. And I'm just going to dive right in. Hananda, you drew the short end of the stick. So share with us, what do you believe causes people to disengage even when they're physically present?
I love this question so much. I've been teaching meditation and yoga for about 25 years, and I actually would challenge the question and say that most people aren't disengaging from presence. They were actually never present to begin with. I think that our society does not train people to be fully embodied, well, in their body, in their emotions, in their breath, and in their intuition. I think mostly we are tamed to perform, to play nice, I think that whenever we are faced with fear, insecurity, any level of challenge, we don't have the training to stay present in that. And therefore, as a society, most people vacate. But again, I think the training isn't there initially to be present again. And for me, it's just not something that we've been taught to be able to. We're taught to please people rather than to be in our breath. Like, how can I be in my breath? Can I sense my feet on the earth while I'm under challenge? Can I speak my truth when I disagree with someone? And I think without that very basic level of skill set, we'll never be present, in that we'll only be present whenever we're having fun. Mm.
I love that. It really does always come back around to awareness, right? And
Yeah.
that's, it's like you said several times, it's just not taught. We don't receive that training as part of, oh, hey, this is important for you to embrace, embody, and know. If we seek it out, there are things obviously that we can work towards mastery on that, but it doesn't seem like it's readily available. I love it. Let's jump over to Flora. Flora, what would you add to Hananda's perspective there on, what causes people to disengage even when they show up and are physically there?
So thank you so much for this question, Kyle. And I think this is a very strong question. And when I think about disengagement, I don't think it happens overnight. Most people don't wake up one morning and decide that, I don't care. I think it's usually the result of repeated experiences over time. In my experience, I have worked across different countries and cultures and have seen people who are physically present every day, attending meetings, responding to emails, meeting deadlines, but mentally and emotionally, they have already checked out.
Mm.
Uh, One of the biggest reasons is that people stop feeling heard or valued
Mm.
is when their ideas are consistently overlooked. When feedback only flows one way, or when employees can't see how their work connects to a larger purpose, and what happens is their motivation starts to fade. And I have done a lot of work around employee relations and employee engagement. And what I have learned is that this engagement is rarely about, a single policy or a process. It's more often about everyday interactions. It's how it's about, how managers communicate, how they give feedback,
Mm.
how they handle difficult conversations, and whether employees feel respected and psychologically safe. And for me, the most critical factor is trust. When
Mm.
employees see a gap between what leaders say and what leaders are actually doing, their trust begins to erode. And once that trust starts to disappear, people may still show up physically, but they stop bringing their best ideas and energy, and the commitment to the workplace.
Yeah, I would totally agree. When that trust starts to diminish, the engagement easily slides into complacency, right? Just not quite sure anymore about that relationship. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Dr. Wheeler, let's jump over to you. What would you add from your perspective on what may cause people to disengage even when they're physically present?
I'm not sure I have as much to add, Kyle, as I'd love to talk about a framework for thinking about it. So when I see people who are physically present but disengaged, particularly at work, um, I can usually trace that back to one of two things: either a lack of clarity or a
Mm.
lack of connection. And I was jotting down some notes as Hananda and Flora were talking, because I think we see that even in all the things they shared. So for Hananda, when she's talking about just not even being taught how to be fully present in our own selves, right? When we don't have any clarity on who we are and what we need and how we think, and we aren't self-aware, we don't have that ability to be present. And when we don't have a true connection to ourself, we lack that ability to be fully
Mm.
engaged. But the same is true within the business environment. So what we need from our leaders is that what Flora was talking about, to be seen and heard and valued. Some of that is clarity. Some of that is understanding what's expected of me, how my work contributes to the overall organizational goals, why what I'm doing actually matters. And then some of that is connection. Like, I need to know that somebody actually sees who I am, in and out of work. Somebody sees my talents and what I have to contribute. Somebody wants to pour into me and help me grow and help me develop. That's where I think a lot of that trust and that psychological safety for me lives in that connection, that I believe that my leader has my best interest at heart and is here to pay attention to me. And man, I will do anything for a leader who I believe that about, a leader who I trust, who I think sees and hears me and values me and is going to stay connected to me. I will do anything. I will work really hard for them and stay fully engaged.
I love it. Such good stuff. And so as we close here's a challenge maybe for the listeners for the week. Instead of asking who showed up, right? When you go in or when you're engaged, think about how are they showing up, right? Take a minute to discern that. Are they still connected? Are they engaged? Are there things that are missing? Are we paying attention to the quiet signs? The people who stop speaking up, that have seemed to have lost their spark. Maybe they're there, but they're not really plugged in. And I think one of the questions we might invite you guys to ask is, what's making it challenging to stay connected and fully engaged right now? And then as leaders, we have to listen, because engagement does start with connection. It starts with clarity. It starts with trust and following through on all of those things. So don't just settle for people being there. Let's engage them so that we understand. What would you tell an emerging leader. So let's think about maybe our younger selves in our late 20s, early 30s, where we're pushing to climb whatever that is, whether it's the entrepreneurial ladder, the corporate ladder, whatever. What would you caution your younger selves about as it relates to this, right? I think for the most part, and I'm not even going to say for the most part, everyone that's ever been on the show is a high performer in some respect. And I think with that comes the drive to succeed, but it also can have its shortcomings, right? So when we think about times maybe that we were disengaged, what would we caution some of these emerging leaders about? What would you look for in yourself and maybe also in others as leaders? Whoever wants to jump in on that one.
I'll jump in. I think that one of the things I would caution them about is to remember that you are never truly doing this alone. And anytime you are doing it alone, you're not going to go as far as you could go. So every time you make a choice to disconnect from somebody in order to facilitate your own success, that is only going to hurt you in the long term. It may help in the short term, but those relationships, particularly the ones that you develop over a longer period of time in your career, are the ones that are going to push you forward. So pay more attention to relationships and connection early on, rather than just your own metrics for success, because that can get you in trouble real fast. The other thing I would say, and I tell people this a lot, as soon as you are supervising somebody else, you need to understand that your job is now to connect with that person. Your job is no longer whatever it was before.
No question. Flora or Hananda?
Hananda, do you want to go ahead?
I'll chime in, and I would echo. Funny, I wish I had Carol in my head whenever I started my early career, and exactly that. I was very fascinating that I was a scientist and that I was very task oriented, and now I am very human oriented. And if I had understood that people were more important than their performance, I would have gotten a lot further, a lot faster. I sadly, in my very early managerial roles, I didn't do a good job. I just thought the job was the outcome rather than the humans that I was around. And now I would say I am absolutely reverse, but it's been a journey to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great insight. Flora.
Sure. So I think I would tell my younger self, not to confuse being busy with, being effective. You know,
Mm.
uh, Early in my career, I was very much focused on, proving myself, delivering results. And what I've learned since then is that leadership is, less about having all the answers and more about creating that environment, where people feel comfortable, bringing their best ideas forward, creating a psychological workplace. And looking back, I wish I had spent even more time listening, asking questions, and understanding people's perspectives. Those skills, it ultimately creates a stronger team and better outcomes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, curiosity is so important, right? The ability to observe those things and ask the right questions at the right time. I had someone tell me a while back, being in the room as a leader is attendance. Being with the room is leadership. And if you think about that, we know the leaders that pop in halfway through the meeting just to observe, right? Or to be seen. But when a leader is with the room, everyone in that room feels a connection, even if there's not a conversation or there's an exchange, right? You just sense that that's there, and you can see that in a very dynamic way in cultures that thrive, right? There's not an expectation that the leader's there because we need them. They're there because there's a sense of belonging and a sense of strength that comes with all of that behind it, right? Yeah. one other thought, I think when we think about, talking to our younger selves, I'll just throw this out there. I kind of close the first portion of the show with a challenge to the audience. I'm curious, what would each of you say might be one habit leaders could practice this next week to grow in this area, to become, let's kind of shift it a little bit, to become more aware of when this may be happening with people on their team, when people are checking out on their team. What's one habit you might offer some guidance on people to practice?
Kyle, I'll jump in. So one, I am in the process of actually editing a book. I have written a book, and the book is full of questions because it's based on that exact idea of how can you be more curious. So what I would say to a leader is the next time that you are about to give feedback to somebody, you have that feeling inside of you that you need to like correct a behavior or say something about something a person has done, to take a step back and ask a question instead.
I love it. That just sounds so easy, right?
It does, and it is not.
So
not
right,
easy.
it's not. It's absolutely. Hananda, what would you offer up?
Yeah, I'm sad to say I was going to go in the same direction. Just ask more questions. Just get curious, using your word, and ask more questions about what's going on for that person. Get curious. But I have this thing, and because it applies to money, everything makes sense with enough information. And it's a money principle that I live by. I just need to seek out the information. Why does this make sense to this person? And now, is it still acceptable or maybe not acceptable? But at least I've gathered enough information to make some discernment rather than a snap decision.
Right.
Yeah, so good. Flora?
So for me, I would encourage leaders to practice intentional check-ins, not for the sake of doing it. Have intentional check-ins. When you notice a change in someone's behavior, don't assume, get curious. Don't assume that, this particular person didn't speak up in the meeting today. Understand that this is the employee or the person who speaks up in each meeting. What happened to her today or what happened to him today? So a simple conversation can uncover a lot of challenges, build trust, and, like you said, it can prevent disengagement before it grows. And in many cases, employees, they don't need a solution immediately. They need to know someone has noticed me, someone cares for me, someone is including me, and someone has cared enough to ask me how I am doing today. Yeah. So that.
I love it. I love it. Curiosity, discernment over judgment, and engage your people with those intentional check-ins, right? We shouldn't be surprised when things happen that way because we're already connected, right? We stay. That's just part of the routine and part of the approach. All right, you guys, fantastic. Thank you so much for your input. That's all the time we have for today. You guys, thanks for listening. Remember, every Thursday at noon Central, join us on LinkedIn when new episodes come out, and anytime on our YouTube channel at MindFit Coaching. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great one. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast, where real leaders step up, get honest, and move the conversation forward. A big thanks to our guest today for bringing the kind of insight you can't fake, the kind that you earn through experience, pressure, and showing up when it counts most. Be sure to join us every Thursday on LinkedIn for new episodes at noon Central, and anytime on our YouTube channel at MindFit Coaching. But most importantly, keep taking inspired action. We'll see you next time.